We're all stupid, we're all going to die. On This Week with Stupid, we have two dumb mistakes by scientific community, one by British medical journal The Lancet, and the other by World Health Organization. Then we have China's new National Anthem Law, HBO Max removing Gone with the Wind. On fun side, we have Tucker Carlson versus Elmo and Rockstars virtue signaling. Then we have J.K. Rowling's Twitter story, and finally current protest with COVID-19. At the end, I promise I will have something to cheer you up a little bit. So without further ado, British medical journal The Lancet published a global study on the effects on hydroxychloroquine on COVID-19. Conclusion of that article was, this drug did more harm than good. Well, that study got officially retracted, which caused chaos in public and their general conception of scientific community. Just so we are clear, it were the authors themselves who requested this retraction. That entire study was based from raw hospital data collected around the world that were provided by Sesame Corporation, and the author suspected, well, what's the technical term? Fudged the data, as some dataset was surprisingly detailed from parts of the world that are not known for their record keeping. Sesame refused to get audited by independent reviewers, as such dataset transfer would violate client agreements and confidentiality requirements. Does that mean hydroxychloroquine is good? Well, not exactly. We're back to square one where we do not have enough data. Science is beautiful. So please don't go around taking these drugs unless prescribed by your actual doctor, okay? Who and the art of communication. World Health Organization held a news briefing about COVID-19, and during that briefing, Dr. Maria van Kerkhove was answering a question about the asymptomatic carriers. These are the people who have the virus but doesn't show any symptoms.
We are constantly looking at this data, and we're trying to get more information from countries to truly answer this question. It still appears to be rare that an asymptomatic individual actually transmits on.
Which seems to be contradicting what WHO has been saying and caused a backlash within medical community and general population. Some of the confusion boiled down to the details of what a asymptomatic infection actually is and the different ways the term is used. While some cases of COVID-19 are fully asymptomatic, sometimes the word is also used to describe people who haven't started showing symptoms yet when they are pre-symptomatic. WHO officials clarified on Tuesday that scientists have not determined yet how frequently people with asymptomatic cases of COVID-19 pass the disease on to others. This caused a subsection of people who again started to believe that the virus is not a big deal if they're not showing symptoms. Once again, people, the lockdown being lifted has a lot to do with economy. Please maintain social distancing and be safe. I have added WHO's current advice for public. Please check it out for everyone's sake. It's down in the links below. China's new National Anthem Law is set to take effect in Hong Kong this week. It stipulates that anyone who deliberately and politically insults the country's national anthem will face up to 3 years in prison. Hong Kong's pro-democratic legislators strongly oppose the law. They say the law's definition of insult is too vague. Changes to anthem's lyrics or even audience booing while the anthem is played can be considered a violation of the law. One of the anthem's lyric translated is, "Arise, ye who refuse to be slaves." One person asked in Twitter, when protesters and oppressed people are singing national anthem to the CCP's tyranny government, is it a violation of the law or upholding the law? While Chinese newspaper Europe Time has declared on its front page that 30 million Hong Kongers support the national security law. At this point, I would remind you that Hong Kong has a population of 7.5 million. This law is just another crackdown on Hong Kong's autonomy and freedom. If you support free speech, you'd understand why this is on This Week's with Stupid. HBO Max removed Gone with the Wind from their streaming platform. Set during and after the American Civil War, Gone with the Wind has long been attacked for its depiction of slavery. Based on the novel by Margaret Mitchell, it features slave characters who seem content with their lot and who remain loyal to their former owners after slavery's abolition. Gone with the Wind received 10 Oscars and remains the highest-grossing movie of all time when its takings are adjusted for inflation. Hattie McDaniel became the first black actress to be nominated for and win an Academy Award for her role as domestic servant Mammy. I will not get into the slippery slope discussion on if it's correct, but I will reminisce about my childhood, where I grew up with Tarzan. When I was around 30, I read an article where it pointed out how racist Tarzan is. I didn't see Tarzan being a white hero savior. Instead, I saw him as a super cool guy who swings from trees to trees and talks to animals. That was it. Back to the story. So after HBO Max announced it, guess what happens? Gone with the Wind hits number 1 on Amazon bestsellers chart. Maybe the best way to convince the conservatives to get something is by removing it under what might seem like unjustifiable censorship. It ended up a great financial boost for the studio. With current J.K. Rowling's Twitter war, maybe similar boost can happen with certain other series. It is the Streisand effect. For those unaware, it's a social phenomenon that occurs when an attempt to hide, remove or censor information has the unintended consequence of further publicizing that information, often via the internet. This is such a funny story, I have to tell you this. In 2003, American entertainer Barbara Streisand sued photographer Kenneth Edelman for distributing aerial pictures of her mansion in Malibu. But Edelman was no paparazzo. He operated the California Coastal Records Project, a resource providing more than 12,000 pictures of the California coast for scientists and researchers to use to study coastal erosion. At the time Barbara sued Edelman for $50 million, the picture in question had been accessed a whopping total of 6 times, twice by Streisand's lawyer. Nonetheless, her lawsuit stated that the photos explicitly showed people how to gain access to her private residence. After news outlets around the world reported on this lawsuit, well, before long, Edelman had a bit more than 6 views. The photo was picked up by the Associated Press and was reprinted countless times. As if single-handedly causing the exact thing she didn't want to happen wasn't bad enough, Barbara also lost the lawsuit. The judge ordered her to cover the $155,000 Edelman incurred in legal fees. Back to HBO. As a commenter so eloquently puts it, does nobody see the irony of conservatives blasting a non-governmental entity for duly exercising its rights afforded to it because of our capitalistic system? In other words, Warner Media owns the distribution rights, they can do whatever they want. Or the fact that the Trump administration killed net neutrality, which is giving these same companies more power?
People of color, especially in the black community, are being treated unfairly because of how they look.
It's a children's show. Got that, Bobby? America is a very bad place, and it's your fault. So no matter what happens, no matter what they do to you when you grow up, you have no right to complain. That's the message, and it starts very young.
So that was right-wing Fox News host Tucker Carlson getting upset with Sesame Street when Elmo and his father Louis discussed racism in a one-off town hall episode on rival channel CNN. They're sad and upset, and they have every right to be, Elmo. People are upset because racism is a huge problem in our country, Louis said. Racism is when people treat other people unfairly because of the way they look or the color of their skin. Take-Two Interactive Software shut down access to Grand Theft Auto Online, Red Dead Online, and several other games Thursday to support Black Lives Matter and demonstrators protesting the death of George Floyd. The game developer will turn off services between 11 a.m. and 1 p.m. PT to honor the legacy of George Floyd and support Black Lives Matter's fight against racial injustice. In a follow-up tweet, Rockstar Game asked players to consider donating to funds that support families who have faced racism, black-owned businesses, and protesters who have called for racial justice. This was received with a ton of support from all media and gaming websites. Now let me tell you a little secret. I'm an old gamer and we are vicious, uncaring outcasts. And we don't like when something comes between us and our game. We're talking about GT freaking A here. This game was released back in 2013 and still on the top chart. Sony just revealed their new generation PS5 and one of the games they showcased was GTA 5. Again, a game that's 7 years old. In case you didn't know, that's a long time in gaming. Where we have EA regurgitating a new FIFA, NBA every year, then we have WWE, Call of Duty, Assassin's Creed, all guilty of the same sin. My point is, the only reason a 7 years old game being in top charts is because people play it. It's super obvious, right? And they play it religiously. This gesture, while appearing very honorable, is it really? They're even saving some money on the time period from the server. And if you want to make a gesture, why don't you donate some money yourself? And you created a negative link between a game and a real-life problem. Wouldn't a better approach be have a discounted sale where all money goes to the charity? But no, that would be a real effort. Hats off to John Cena. Say what you may about his 10 moves of doom. Instead of making videos on how we all stand by you, he actually donated real money. So J.K. Rowling got in trouble in Twitter for the following tweet. In current climate, I think it would be safe for me to clarify something first. I support freedom and free speech as long it's not encroaching on someone else's freedom. We can all agree with that, right? I don't care how you dress, how you identify, for me to be your friend or acquaintance. I do have some trans acquaintances back east. But remember that qualifier, as long it doesn't encroach on someone else's freedom. This might be a slippery slope argument, but I'll explain why I'm still making it. Let's pick 3 simple scenarios. Number 1. Which loo do you go to? That's a bathroom or washroom for friends across the pond. Number 2. Which sports do you play? I mean, do you play football in the boys' team or in a girls' team? Do you wrestle boys or girls? And finally, number 3. If you're committed, which prison would you go to? Male prison or female prison? Now those 3 questions are obvious to over 99% of us. According to a survey in 2016 from the Williams Institute, estimates that 0.6% of US identifies as transgender. Our own NHS did a study in 2017, and this is the kicker. They asked LGBT and intersex people for their views on public services and about their experiences more generally living as a LGBT person in the UK. The survey received over 108,000 valid responses, making it the largest national survey to date of LGBT people anywhere in the world. 61% of respondents identified as gay or lesbian, and a quarter, 26%, identified as bisexual. A small number identified as pansexual, asexual, and queer. Does anyone else see the problem with this survey? And I don't even know what pansexual means. Bisexual is attracted to multiple genders, and pansexual means attracted to all genders. Okay. In UK, population was 65.84 million in 2017. 7% of 108,000 is 7,560, which itself is 0.01148% of 65.84 million. Now please understand that I'm not saying that a low number means they don't have any right. Of course not, but that right shouldn't encroach on the other 99% of the population. Back to these questions, okay? So for the small section of the population, it's not a quick answer. Full disclosure, there are some trans figures that I follow. There should be a photo of Blair White on the screen. She comes to mind. I do like her content. Now, time to play a game. On the screen right now, there should be a couple of boxes. And the question I have for you is, which ones do you think are female? If you have answered 4, you're wrong. The correct answer is 1, 2, and 3. And 5 and 6. Yeah, I know. In essence, laws haven't completely caught up with this situation. As a personal experience, I have seen a trans female standing next to a wall to pee. I asked my friend how that was possible, and she explained that they didn't have any transgender surgery. The guy in number 3 is a gem. He's Jessica Yaniv from beautiful Canada. Oh, Canada, I love you, but what's wrong with you? So last year, he sued a bunch of small businesses. Those were all ran by women from minority backgrounds working from their own home or client's home, providing waxing and other beauty stuff to female patrons. Come on, I'm a guy. I don't know what stuffs are. This guy, who identifies as a woman, sued them because they wouldn't wax his hairy balls. Yes, you heard me right. His hairy balls. 2 were forced to shut down their businesses due to the complaints, according to their lawyers. Most of the respondents do not speak English as their first language. Finally, he lost his court case, but quite a lot of damage was already done. I can bring up many similar events, and that's the problem, where the criteria is just self-identifying. To point out this ridiculousness of this all, we had British rapper Zubi, while identifying as a woman, not only smashing British women's deadlift record, but also UK women's bench press record. Of course, he did this as a joke, a tongue-in-cheek video, as part of a mission to show athletes who are genetically male should not be allowed to compete alongside women. I do not know enough to say what makes a woman woman and what makes a man man. I had always thought of it coming down to XY chromosomes, and any deviation of it at a very small percentage is anomaly. Now, my rant as a dad, back to the bathroom question. In UK so far, it doesn't appear to be as extreme as Canada and some other parts of the world. Suppose it was okay for a man to walk into a female bathroom because he identifies as one. As a man, I'm not okay with that. As a dad, I'm doubly not okay with that. I'm not a violent man, but I might get violent in that case. This was supposed to be the shortest section, and it ended up being the longest, and I didn't even talk about J.K. Rowling. So, she put out this tweet, which was apparently transphobic. I rather you draw your own conclusion. People went nuts over it. From Body Shop to Daniel Radcliffe, all had the same message. I tried to find some of the views on why it's transphobic. The first video was a dude with bushy beard being a female. That was hard to watch. Did I learn anything? No. It was repeating keywords instead of why the tweet is transphobic. In response to Rowling's tweet, some Twitter users highlighted that transgender men experience menstruation, transgender women don't. Let me break that down. The ones who were women experience menstruation, those ones who never were don't? Doesn't it just prove her point? I need to stop with this silliness. This is a hypocrisy full stop. So after the horrible death of George Floyd, we have seen protests across the globe. And it raises a very important question. Why are we not social distancing anymore? Do we not have to wear face masks anymore? Well, according to the US Centers for Disease Control, they are still seeing hundreds, if not over 1,000 cases of coronavirus in the US every day. CDC guidelines are still telling people to stay at least 6 feet from other people and to stay out of crowded places and avoid mass gatherings. If you recall, a couple of weeks ago, we had another protest. That one were anti-lockdown protest. So what's the difference? A couple of weeks ago, we heard how these anti-lockdown protests are a risk to your health. Now there are even bigger protests and we seem to be okay with it. I'm naive. I have been saying that coronavirus doesn't care in some of my videos. I was wrong. It does care about people's politics. Scientists are now saying that the coronavirus is not much to worry about as long as we are protesting against systemic racism. Seriously. An open letter was published in the first week of June that was signed by more than 1,200 people, including prominent scientists, infectious disease professionals, and university professors. Link is in the description below. And in the letter, a public health response to these demonstrations is also warranted, but this message must be wholly different from the response to white protesters resisting stay-home orders. Infectious disease experts must be clear and consistent in prioritizing an anti-racist message. What the? So infectious disease expert should prioritize an anti-racist message instead of stopping the spread of that infectious disease? Black people are also more likely to develop COVID-19. So compare these two gatherings. Which one has more chance of casualty? However, as public health advocates, we do not condemn these gatherings as risky for COVID-19 transmission. We support them as vital to the national public health and to the threatened health specifically of black people in United States. Now, to be fair, further down they have 4 bullet points saying protesters should wear face masks, keep 6 feet apart, not mingle with multiple groups, and stay home if they're sick. But many of those things don't seem to be happening. For the authorities, they have the following advice. Prepare for an increased number of infections in the days following a protest. Provide increased access to testing and care for people in the affected communities, especially when they or their family members put themselves at risk by attending protests. So they are acknowledging that people can put themselves at risk. This should not be confused with a permissive stance on all gatherings, particularly protest against stay-home orders. Those actions not only oppose public health interventions but are also rooted in white nationalism and run contrary to respect for black lives. Overall message of this letter is, protests are justified despite the risk of spreading the virus because they are for a good cause. But those anti-lockdown? Well, those were white protesters resisting stay-home orders and are evil and racist. Thankfully, not all health experts agree with this theory. Dr. Anthony Fauci has expressed concerns about the coronavirus spreading because of the recent nationwide protest. Those were the same concerns he expressed several weeks ago during the anti-lockdown protest. His concern remains the same, that is based on actual data and not feelings. I'm all for ending racism, but at the same time, I want the virus contained. We haven't won yet. The issue isn't about whether people should be protesting, neither the risk they are willing to take. It's about scientists allowing their personal political beliefs to influence the health advice they give to the public. This sets up a very bad precedence. When people see health experts telling people which protests are okay and which are not, based not on science but on their personal political beliefs, that damages their credibility. Politicization of science is dangerous. Back in my hometown Leeds, yesterday was Saturday and I decided to get some stuff from Sainsbury's. As at this time it closed at 8 PM, I got there 15 minutes early and the whole parking lot was full. Way too many people, way too many cars, no one wearing a mask, no one following social distancing. I just drove to a different shop. I asked a cop what was happening and apparently it's a car meet. This is where you take your souped up car and admire other souped up cars. Imagine it's like Fast and Furious except nowhere near glamorous and no Batmobile that I could see. Protesting for a reason I can understand. But a gathering as such for bloody car? What's wrong with people? I had a couple of people laugh about my mask. I tried to stay as far away as possible to get the footage. Welcome to stupidity. I don't have high hopes for us. In last week's video, I showed a graph of deaths in UK. The idea was to compare it with this week's graph. Well, here it is, side by side. Well, that's all done for all the stupidity I could handle. After my last video, I realized I needed something cheerful for the viewers. So now, if I can, I will link to something I have enjoyed in YouTube that you might like as well. For this week, it will be Alternative Math, a short film. It's a couple of years old, so sue me, I just found it this week. Without giving up too much, it's about a well-meaning math teacher finding herself trumped by a post-fact America. Link down in description. It is good. Well, that's all. As you might have noticed that this is quite a new channel, and during this genesis, comments and subscribe counts a lot more than usual. If you have enjoyed this content, I would implore you to like the video and maybe post a comment to feed YouTube algorithm. You can even be a superstar and subscribe as well. If you dislike this video, please give me a thumbs down and maybe take your time to tell me why in the comments below. You might find similar contents in my other videos. Well, that's it. Have a safe day. Signing off.
Try.